What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. Dan Nicholson here with Financial Certainty Friday. Just going to hang out for a second and see if anybody jumps on board before I get rolling. Now I've got see a couple people coming on board here. So we're going to do something special or extra special today. I'm going to have a guest, which I'm really excited to do. Joseph Blalock is going to join us from Antidote here in a few minutes and I'm going to answer a few questions that he has about small business finance. But before I add him to this, I just want to chat about a couple of things. Earlier this week, I did a post about Q4 and how thus far I've been hearing a lot of people with sort of this mindset of I was just about to, but, and sort of this mindset that, well, it's just about to start focusing on my health and wellness, but I was just about to get serious about my financial management, but, or I was just about to get serious about my marketing, but, and what I'm really trying to encourage people this week in particular is to focus on a few things. One, be decisive. Only you can decide what's right for you. Number two, focus on innovating where you differentiate. So many times I see folks spending time worrying about things that really don't differentiate them from everybody else. So focus on what really separates you from everybody else. And the things that don't differentiate you, that's when you need to bring in experts and people who've done it before so that you can really just optimize those areas of your business or your life. And then the last thing is know yourself and know your enemies. I really love that quote and mindset, and it's the idea that if you don't know yourself, then you might be in a shame spiral or have some fear or avoidance that's going on, and that's where you go back to this I was going to but approach to things. So make sure you know yourself and know your enemies. Know the things that cause you to go in spirals. So just want to emphasize that, Q4, that's really the time, I think, for a lot of folks that want to finish the year strong and get through the things that they had set out for themselves for the year. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I put together this workbook. It's called the 5 Metrics That Matter. In my opinion, it's the only metrics that you really need to be concerned about if you're running a business-to-business company, service-based business, coaching business, counseling business. And if you're interested in getting these metrics and learning about them, you can just comment metrics on this Facebook Live, and we'll make sure to send over the workbook to you. With that said, I'm going to bring on Joseph, and we're going to do a little chat. So hopefully this works. He is, I think, about to connect. Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for taking a few minutes out of your day to chat. I think maybe a good place to start is maybe you can just sort of talk a bit about you and your business and what you do.
Sure, yeah. So I'm the owner of Antidote here in Austin, Texas, which is a graphic design firm which specializes in helping business owners build a premium brand for themselves and attract their ideal customers. And so the way that we do that is the unique combination of working with those business owners on their brand, but also user experience as well. And a lot of agencies either do one or the other. And I found that was kind of a unique spot that, my view is brand is experience and experience is brand. And so, focusing on bringing those two together really helps business owners, I've found.
Cool. From your experience, what sort of trips people up when they're trying to kind of define their brand?
I think when they they start at the end and start thinking about kind of the executions and logos and websites without first thinking about who their customer is, what problems they're truly solving, and actually exactly like you said, what their difference is and why that difference matters. So oftentimes I tend to slow my clients down, tell them to stop, hold on, let's think about, what's really at stake here. What are you trying to solve in your business? And then from there, we have all of the ingredients to then go execute on, the visuals, the logos, the websites, things like that.
So they're just sort of with this mindset that they want to get it done, and they already have these maybe misconceptions about what they quote unquote need to do. And so they're coming to you like, just give me a logo or get this thing done. And really they need to step back and not spend a bunch of money on these end products until they figure out what their customers actually want. So.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a common thing for entrepreneurs to think that way, to want to get things done and check that box. But when you're talking about your brand and how your brand is put out into the world and what people associate with that brand, that's something you just can't mess up. And once it's put out in the world, people have a certain viewpoint of you, from then on. And so you've got to be very careful and consider everything. Right.
Yeah, it's interesting because you get the mindset of just sort of like checking the box, trying to get it done, and then it ends up costing you more, I imagine, when you put it out there and it's like crickets. And you're like, okay, I guess we got to redo our brand again. It's probably not something you want to be doing, over and over again, I'm guessing.
Exactly. Yeah, and businesses do that. I mean, there's some businesses do brand refreshes over time, but they're typically larger with huge budgets, and the amount of time between those refreshes are 10, 15 years. The opposite end of that scale is the entrepreneur that's trying to do everything themselves. For example, I've had this one client that's been trying to rename his business himself for 2 years, and he's been stuck on that. And so it's been a super painful thing for him. And, I was able to come in and take care of it in a couple of weeks. And
oh, wow. Okay. That's the power with someone who has a process and not just sort of like
and an expertise.
Cool names up on. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Pay the experts to do what they do. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you sharing a bit more about sort of your business and process. I think you had a couple of tax and accounting questions, and I was hoping to, hear some of those and try to get them answered for you.
Yeah. So 2 questions I had. My business is in the middle of growing. It's mainly been me, a couple contract designers, and a contract project manager to help keep everything on the rails. So because my business is in the process of growing, 2 questions I had were, how do you forecast or deal with variable income, especially when your spouse might also have variable income?
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The other question was, what are the advantages or disadvantages to maybe having an S-Corp versus an LLC, for example? So I'm currently taxed as an LLC.
Yeah. Okay. Why don't I start with the LLC versus S-Corp one first? There's some nuance with the way that LLCs work with the tax code. So by default, if you're an LLC, the IRS treats you as if you were a sole proprietorship. And basically what that means is all of your income, so what you were paid and all the expenses, get reported directly on your personal tax return. And the LLC gives you some legal liability protection, basically separating your personal assets from the business assets. But the LLC profits, so revenues minus expenses, those are all taxed the same way as wages are taxed. And so what I mean by that is that wages are subject to federal income taxes. So those are the brackets. Maybe you've seen them before. So you're married, there's a married filing joint set of brackets, and they go from 10 to essentially 40%. And then separately, there's this whole set of taxes for Social Security and Medicare. And when you're employed, those taxes are taken out of your check by your employer at 7.65%, and your employer has to match that. And when you're self-employed, you're the employee and the employer, so you end up paying all of the tax, which is 15.3%. So all of those details to say, when you're an LLC, you pay all this federal income tax, and then you pay this tax called self-employment tax at 15.3% of all of your profits. So I mentioned that, I told you that so I could tell you about the S-Corp. The purpose of an S-Corp is to minimize that self-employment tax, that 15.3%. It doesn't change the federal income tax. And basically what happens is you make an election, so you tell the IRS by sending in a form, hey, don't tax me as a sole proprietorship, tax me as an S-Corp. And so you're still an LLC for legal purposes, but now you've got this separate filing that you have to do. And so there are some additional costs with having a separate return, and you have to pay yourself a reasonable salary. And there's a whole analysis to do to figure out what reasonable is. That reasonable salary gets that self-employment tax. It's called payroll tax in this circumstance. Any money that's left over, profits left over, not subject to that tax. So what you're trying to do with the S-Corp is you're trying to justify a really low wage so that you've got a bunch of profits left over to minimize the amount of that 15.3% tax. Does that
that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's all about the self-employment tax. It's 15.3% essentially. And so the reason when it typically starts to make sense, where there's a big enough gap between profits that you had and what you can justify paying yourself, is usually around 100,000 in profits. That's typically the number where it starts to make sense. So once you get to that threshold and you can reasonably predict that you'll be there for years to come, then that's when you'd want to make that election. And the more the profits go up, the bigger the savings. So you can essentially figure out what the savings. Quick math is profits minus the reasonable salary, that difference, simplistically times 15.3%. There's a bit more to it, but that's sort of the moral of the story.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I know I got into some details, but did that get to your question?
Yeah, that made sense. Yeah.
Perfect. So then the second question, in your case, you've got maybe some variable income and trying to figure out how to sufficiently, I guess, plan around plan your cash flow. Is that sort of the gist of it?
Yeah. It's mainly, neither my wife or I are salaried. We're project basis basically. So. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So the first step, I think, is to figure out what the minimum amount is that you need to exist. And so based off sort of all of the bills plus some amount of like discretionary spending, that's sort of the starting point. And not knowing that, I think, is where a lot of the anxiety comes from. If you don't have like a pretty succinct number and it's sort of a generality. Because I think the pain point then is, can we really afford to like go out to dinner? Can we really afford to like buy this extra thing? Or given the uncertainty around income, did we do something that we're going to regret here in the next month or so? So I think the first step, figure out the minimum amount and have clarity around discretionary spending. Then it comes down to making the most of the time that you're spending when you're in the working hours, and part of that is of course like a sales and marketing piece that can be a bit nebulous, and finding your process there. But then when you are working on clients, there's a couple of metrics that really matter. I call them the 5 metrics that matter. And I mentioned them earlier. If you want them, you can just post metrics. I'll send you this workbook. So tracking on a daily basis your sales, tracking on a daily basis the ending balance in your bank accounts. That's going to keep you focused on at least reaching the number you need to cover all your expenses. And then it's looking at specifically to this question, realization. And realization is a measure of how much time you're spending on billable projects versus how much you can actually bill your client. And some people work on a project basis, some people work on an hourly basis, but at the end of the day, your client has some willingness to pay, and if you try to bill them more than that, they're going to push back or say no. And so you've got to track and have a sense of how much of my time at the rate I want to charge am I actually able to collect. And until you have clarity of that, it's going to be really difficult to grow and scale your business and set very specific goals on how much value you want to get from your time. So if you want to get $500 an hour, set that as a target and figure out either what clients you need to get to justify that or how you can be more efficient with your time to get that rate up based off the value you're given. So I guess to sort of summarize, figure out the minimum amount that you need each month so you're comfortable on the discretionary, and then figure out what value you want from your time and sort of track that so that you can become more efficient or find better clients to get more consistency and cash flow.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, that helps a lot. Sounds like making sure that you keep track of your daily, weekly, monthly incomes and outflows and how that fits in with your life.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's almost the equivalent is, say, you go on a diet and there's a certain goal you're trying to, Operation Hard Body, there's like a certain physique that you're trying to get to, and you can get there faster if you're actually tracking what you're eating and how often you're working out. And most people hate doing that because it's kind of a pain. But at the same point, you know, sort of subconsciously, if I did that, I would get there faster. Mm-hmm. And so there's this push and pull of like, do I want to do it? How badly do I want it? And do I want it badly enough that I'm willing to do some of this stuff that I hate doing?
Right. Awesome. Yeah, that was very helpful. Thanks.
Well, thanks for jumping on, and I appreciate your time. And I guess that's a wrap. I don't have a cool catchphrase or anything, but for next week. So yeah, thanks. We'll chat soon.
Yeah,
All right,
thanks
everybody for joining. Take care.
Bye.